Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the final game of classical chess in the third round of the FIDE World Cup being held here in Baku, Azerbaijan. Now, as you guys know, I drew my game yesterday with the black pieces against GM Gledura from Hungary, and today in the second and final classical game, I have the white pieces, so it's pretty simple. If I win, I move on to the next round. If it's a draw, we play tie breaks, and if I lose, I am eliminated from the competition. So, playing with the white pieces, obviously I want to put some pressure on my opponent. So I play e4, Benjamin plays e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and now I play bishop b5. This, of course, is the classic Spanish or the Ruy Lopez opening, which has been in prominence or in favor for the last 500 plus years. So we get a6, bishop to a4, knight to f6, and now I castle. Benjamin plays bishop e7, and I play this move d3 here, guarding the pawn on e4. Now, this is known as the closed Spanish, where white plays this move d3, as opposed to trying to play c3 and d4. Now, one of the reasons I play this is because Benjamin actually plays the Marshall gambit very frequently with the black pieces. The Marshall goes with rook e1, b5, bishop b3, castle, c3, and d5. So, Benjamin has played this. I drew in this Marshall Gambit against Magnus Carlsen in Norway chess a couple of months back. I simply was not in the mood to go into this variation. So I played d3, Benjamin plays b5, bishop to b3, and now he decides to play his move d6 instead. After d6, I play this move bishop d2, and this is a slightly unusual move. The reason I play bishop d2 here is quite straightforward. If I were to play a move like rook to e1, black can play knight a5, simply trading the knight for the bishop. Now, it's not a huge issue here after h3, knight b3, a takes b3 objectively, but black does get the two bishops here, and generally that's what you want, whereas if I'm playing this position with the white pieces, I don't want to lose this bishop, which is on this really, really nice diagonal. So when I play bishop d2, it stops black from being able to play knight a5 and going after the bishop, but additionally, I keep another idea in play as well. Normally, you would play a move like a3 here, so on knight a5, there's bishop a2, or a move like c3, so on knight a5, you can go bishop c2, but here black can play c5, and this is a pretty standard position. So when I go bishop d2 and black castles, first of all, I play h3 to stop bishop g4, which would pin the knight on f3. And now after bishop to b7, I play this move rook to e1 here, trying to prevent black from playing d5. Black would love to play a move like d5 right here, and after takes, black is actually already a little bit better potentially. So I play rook to e1 here, so that if black goes d5, I can now take and play knight c3, and there's a lot of pressure on this pawn at e5 immediately. If black trades, you're going to lose this pawn next turn, and if you move the knight away, I simply capture, and I have an extra pawn. Also, it's important to note that you do not take right away, because after takes bishop f6, you're going to have to move the rook away, and after bishop takes b2, you're going to lose this rook in the corner. So, rook e1 is prophylactic stopping d5, Benjamin plays queen d7, and now I play a3 here, simply creating an escape square for the bishop. Benjamin plays this move knight to d8, and now I play this move c4, which is the whole reason that I played bishop d2 in the first place. If we go back for a second and look at this position all the way back here, after c3, it's really unlikely you can ever play c4 because you've pushed the pawn, and so unless you're going to play a3 in some kind of weird c4, generally it's not feasible. So back to the game here, we got this position here where after knight d8, I do play c4 here, trying to develop the knight behind this nice little pawn center here with these three pawns or the triangle formation. So Benjamin plays knight e6, I go knight to c3, and here he plays this move c6. Now, c6 is a move that I had not looked at before the game. It's worth pointing out that this move c5 was one of the ideas that I had considered. And I know that after c5, white can again play an idea like bishop a2 with rook b1 and b4, which is why when Benjamin played c6, I very quickly played this move bishop a2. He played bishop d8, and now I go b4, bishop b6, and rook to b1. Now, Benjamin, after the game, did ask me how much of this was preparation before the game, and I told him that it wasn't specific preparation, but I knew of this idea with bishop a2, b4, and rook b1 in another setup, very specifically with c5. Now, it's also worth pointing out that here white can play bishop to e3, which is an interesting move, but black can go c5 here, correcting his error on the previous turn and preventing white from pushing this pawn to d4. So that's why I played bishop a2. We get bishop d8, b4, bishop b6, and now I play this move rook to b1. Now, it's a very nuanced move, but the reasoning behind playing rook b1 is quite straightforward. If we look at this position from a general standpoint, let's just say I play a move like rook to c1. Where is my opponent's counterplay? What is my opponent trying to do? You do have to remember, chess is a game where you look for your opponent's moves as well as your own. And what black would love to do here is play a move like a5 to open up the a file down the road so that this rook is very active, or potentially play c5 here, gripping the d4 square, or offering a bunch of trades of pawns here on the b and c files. So black has these ideas with a5, c5, or potentially maybe d5, although realistically, d5 will never be possible because the e5 pawn will always hang. And even if you get, say, bishop c7, d5, I can take and take with the knight due to the rook being on e1. So black has 3 pawn breaks here. d5, which is very unlikely because the e5 pawn is weak, c5 or a5. So when I play rook to b1 here, now if black tries to play c5, I can take, and after, let's just say bishop c5, now I can take, and take with the knight on b5 here, and white already has a bit of an advantage. So rook b1 is very, very prophylactic to sort of play against these two pawn breaks or pushes to either a5 or c5 here. So Benjamin plays knight to d4. I take the knight, and now he takes with the bishop. Now, I spent quite a bit of time here. As you'll notice, Benjamin was burning through his clock. He was already down to 28 minutes, down nearly 50 minutes on the clock after he plays knight takes d4. So I spent a little bit of time before capturing, but the idea was pretty simple here. If black doesn't have c5, a5, or d5, black has no pawn breaks, and white does have more space here due to these pawns being on b4, c4, and e4, all in this 4th rank. So what are my ideas now that I've restricted his counterplay with a5 or c5? And the idea, like in many Spanishes, is quite simple. I want to get a knight to f5. So the question is, how do I get a knight around? So I trade the knights, he takes with the bishop, and now I reroute this knight to g3 and f5. It's worth pointing out that after the game, I did talk to Benjamin about pawn takes knight, which I thought wasn't great, but it was an interesting try, because after knight e2, black can trade the pawns on c4 and go for this break with pawn to d5. Now, after pawn takes d5, e takes d5, and knight takes d5, the idea for black long term is to play c5 and open up the scope for this light square bishop. But even in a position like this, after queen b3, rook d8, knight g3, maybe black can even go knight c3 here, sacrificing a pawn to open up the diagonal, and maybe later on even something like c5 to open up the diagonals for both bishops. Now, in this exact position, it's not possible, as you can tell from the bar, but nonetheless, there are ideas like knight to c3 to open up the scope for this bishop, and then long term to open up scope for the other bishop. So I thought this was an interesting possibility. But Benjamin captured with the bishop instead. So now I play knight to e2. He moves the bishop away, of course. If you don't move the bishop and play a move like rook e8, after takes, I can maybe go f4 and e5 here. I have a great diagonal from a2 to f7. I can push e5, queen f3, and it's an absolute dream. I can even maybe go bishop g5 followed by f4 as well. And black is just doing very, very badly here. So Benjamin plays bishop b6, and now I go knight to g3 with the idea of jumping with knight to f5. Now, as I've said in many a video, Garry Kasparov, the former world chess champion, he said that a knight on f5 with support is worth at least 1 pawn. So if I can get this knight to f5, I have a great chance. Additionally, much like in my first round match against Karthik had some bishops that were a little bit offsides, and once again, this bishop on b6 is kind of offsides relative to the pawn and the knight here. Black would love to be able to, say, put this bishop on f8, for example, and black is probably doing relatively fine. But in this position, the bishop is very, very far away from the kingside defense, so there are some issues. So Benjamin plays a5 here, which is an idea to try to create counterplay. He has to push for some breaks, because if I get knight f5, queen f3, and queen g3, and black is just getting checkmated very quickly on the kingside. So he goes a5, and here I play this move, bishop g5. Now, at this point, I was up 45 minutes on the clock, and there's a crushing idea here, which I simply did not see because I am not 3,500. So in this position, Stockfish actually says that I should sack a pawn with c5, because after takes bishop c5 and go queen to c1 here. And now if black moves the bishop to, say, b6, now I have knight to f5 followed by bishop h6. And this is apparently just crushing due to both of these diagonals, the queens, the bishop, and the knight. Now again, I'm only human, and don't forget this is an elimination situation. If I blunder and lose, I am gone from the event. So I wasn't able to find it, but it's worth pointing out that I do think this is very much an idea that's in the spirit of another former world chess champion, Michael Tal. Now, yesterday's game was the Benoni. It was also, there were also shades of games of Tal's that I had mentioned, but this is another situation where, ironic compared to yesterday, there's another queen c1 versus a queen c8 move, which would have been very strong. At any rate, I'm only a human, and it's way too chaotic to play a move like this, so I go bishop g5 instead, trying to double stack the pawns on the f-file. Here, Benjamin plays knight e8. Now, this really was annoying to me because I spent nearly 20 minutes on this move. I was considering taking and playing bishop g5. The reason I did not trade the pawns and play bishop g5 is because after bishop to d8, if I play bishop b3, I thought that black would play d5, striking hard in the center here, and I think black is doing okay because he's opening up the diagonal for the light square bishop. So I spent nearly 20 minutes on this move, bishop to g5, and then Benjamin plays knight e8 pretty quickly, and I'm feeling very stupid because if I had known he was going to go knight e8, I would have played bishop g5 in 2 minutes instead of spending 18 minutes. Now, one of the very important points here is that I spent a lot of time on this move as well because I considered trying to take on b5, but I was actually a little bit concerned about pawn takes pawn, because after pawn takes, bishop takes, now I can't capture with the pawn because I hang the bishop, and if I take with the rook, black has bishop a5, winning material here. So I spent a lot of time. I wasn't sure about this. Of course, the computer says I can do it anyway because after a takes b4 in this position, apparently I can take and just ignore this pawn altogether and play knight to f5 once again because a knight on f5 is worth at least one pawn. So Stockfish understands the themes even better than I do, which is not really surprising, but worth pointing out. So I could have done something like knight f5 and after rook takes a3, played something like bishop c4 with rook b4, bishop e7, knight e7 ideas, or even queen g4 to attack on the king side. And white is apparently doing very, very well, but to a puny human like myself, I simply could not understand why. So I end up rejecting it and playing bishop b3 instead. Benjamin trades the pawns on b4, and now he plays this move g6, which made me very happy. I was very concerned about this trade of pawns on c4 and c5 here, opening up the diagonal. And after b5, for example, black can play something like g6 with knight c7, knight e6, and knight to d4. Now, the computer still thinks white is better, but I was not 100% sure what was going on because if black can rotate the knight to d4 and get the classic diamond formation, black will actually probably be better here. One sample just to show you guys what I mean. If black can put this knight on d4, suddenly black is doing great. He's got a great knight protected by the pawns. This bishop is very active on the light square diagonal. Additionally, down the road, black can even go f5 to open up this diagonal permanently. And now the bishop on b3 is very, very passive with the pawn in the way. Whereas if we look at this position back here, bishop is very, very active. Also worth mentioning is that after takes, if I play bishop takes c4, black can play d5, building a big black center. And after bishop b3, knight to d6, I think black is doing great. After queen f3, maybe even a move like f6. Probably not this exact position. But if black can get something like this with this big black center here, black is doing very, very well. So Benjamin plays g6, and I was very happy to see this. This is one of the drawbacks of using a lot of time early in the game, so that Benjamin's feeling the pressure on the clock, has to get to move 40 before he gets more time, starts making quicker moves. And this is sort of the first move where things start to go in the wrong direction. So after g6, I trade the pawns on b5. Now the pawn structure is very fixed on the queen side. Now the only pawn breaks are d4, d5, or f4 and f5. So with only these minimal pawn breaks, now it becomes a game where I try to maneuver my pieces. And when I look at the placement of the pieces, there's one big advantage, or two big advantages I have. First of all, black has weakened his king side. There's no bishop inside this triangle of pawns, so the dark squares are a little bit weak. Secondly, my light square bishop is much better than his light square bishop because my bishop has scope, whereas bishop is staring at a pawn wall. So with these two advantages, what do I want to do? Now, I can't really play for d4, f4 here because obviously if I play d4, black takes the pawn. f4 is illegal because I lose my king. So I play knight to f1 here with the idea of rerouting the knight either to e3 and d5 or e3 and g4 and going towards f6 and h6 potentially. Benjamin plays this move king h8, which I think is a mistake here. I actually was expecting to play knight g7, and after knight to e3, I saw this move h5 to stop knight g4. And after knight d5 takes, and a move like rook a c8, I wasn't sure how much better I was in this position, even though I have the two bishops, and I also have a classic wooden shield here in the middle of the board. That, however, is offset by this great bishop on b6 that is spying the pawn on f2 and the king on g1 as well. But I don't have all the time in the world. I have to do something, and I felt that even if Benjamin found this line, I still would be very slightly better with no risk of losing, so I should go for it. So I play knight to f1, Benjamin plays king h8, and now I play this move bishop to e3, trying to get rid of black's really, really good bishop on b6 here. Because if I can remove this bishop, say I go bishop e3, bishop d8, and I can even get d4 in, I'm doing very, very well here. So I play bishop e3 to eliminate this great dark square bishop. Benjamin trades. I take back with the knight, which now can jump to d5 or potentially f5. I also have ideas like d4, so I'm starting to feel pretty good about myself. Benjamin plays knight f6 here, which I thought was the best move because it prevents me from playing d4 in the center, because then I would hang this pawn on e4. Now, Benjamin at this point, I think, thought that he was out of the danger zone, that he's very marginally worse, but he should be able to draw the game. And this is exactly the moment that he relaxes. And this happens a lot in chess where when you think you've survived the danger, you've spent a lot of time, you think you've survived the danger, that's exactly when you make a mistake. And after queen d2, Benjamin plays this move rook f e8, which is not the best move, but he has a very simple idea. He wants to play d5 and open up the center of the board, but I say no by playing this move queen to b2, because now if black plays d5, I can trade on d5, and I have this very nasty move rook takes e5, and if black takes the bishop, rook takes rook is actually checkmate. It's a double check here, and it's GG, why not? So black can't play d5 here because the queen spies the pawn on e5, and Benjamin plays this move king g8, which is a very, very big mistake. Now, I felt like Benjamin was starting to get a little bit iffy. He's low on time, starting to make some moves that aren't best, but I played this move f4 after 2 minutes. Now, this is where I should have sat on my hands and thought for 10 minutes before moving, but in my mind, I already had a feeling that f4 was the right move, and so when I didn't see anything wrong with it, I decided to play it. Now, the irony is that as soon as I played f4, I actually was wondering if I should have played rook f1 to prepare this f4 pawn push. And after f4, white actually is doing really, really well. Probably close to winning, in fact, whereas in the game after f4, it's not quite as clean because here Benjamin blunders with knight h5. If he had played e takes f4, it's not clear whether I would have been able to win this game. Because if I play this move knight to f5, which looks very logical, after pawn takes knight, queen takes knight, black has the triple stack or the tower of power here with these 3 pawns in the f file. But after rook to e5, I actually don't have a way to checkmate. It looks like with this queen and this bishop, and even checks like queen g5, I should be doing very well. But there's no way to break through. If I could lift the rook with rook e3, I'd also be winning, but the pawn captures the rook. So white's still probably a little bit better in this position after rook to f1, but after queen e7 in an endgame, it's very, very unlikely that I would win this position. Additionally, however, I saw that after e takes f4, I could also play queen takes f6, and after takes d5, there are probably moves like rook f1 or maybe even queen d4 here, and I should be doing very well. Now, it's not clear how great this is because even if I line up the legendary triple stack, let's say rook e7, rook f3 here, I have the triple stack on the f file, but black can always kind of just sit around, and after rook a6, queen g5, rook e6, or even rook d6, it's not really clear where my breakthrough is. Now, I should be better with a double stack, this great bishop and this great queen here. Maybe I can even go h4 and h5 down the road, but there isn't a knockout blow on the spot. That being said, it's a very pleasant position to play, and I was very happy to have this option. But to get back to the main point, computer does not say that this line after takes, fe3, rook e3 is winning, whereas the other one with rook to f1, it does say that it's cleanly winning. Nonetheless, I play f4, and Benjamin plays this move knight h5, which is a very serious mistake because now I can jump to g4 with the knight, and black has all kinds of issues. First of all, the pawn on e5 is under attack. So if you play a move like rook b8, I can just take, and win the game. You can't take this free pawn at f4 with the horse, because then there's the family fork with knight to f6, forking the king, the queen, and the rook at the same time. Additionally, if black tries to take with the e-pawn on f4, now I have knight to h6, king to f8, queen to h8, king e7, queen takes h7, and suddenly black's position is collapsing. The f7 pawn is weak. Maybe you can go rook f8, but after knight f7, king e8, queen takes g6. Now the knight is loose, pawn on d6 is hanging, and it's a complete disaster, and black will have to resign very soon. So here Benjamin plays this move rook e7. It's also worth pointing out if you play a move like queen c7 to add insult to injury here, there's even takes knight to h6 check, forking the king and the pawn, and this also should be winning for white. So Benjamin plays rook to e7 here, and now I take the pawn on e5. He takes back, and now I play knight takes e5 here. Simply up a pawn, great knight, great bishop, black king is very weak, and I should be winning. So Benjamin plays queen d6, and here I make a slight mistake. I play this move knight to g4. Now, during the game, I knew that knight takes f7 had to be winning here, because after queen b6, d4, for example, black can play king g7, and I think even rook f1 or knight g5 should be winning, but I felt in my mind that I wasn't 100% sure how easy this would be, so instead I played this move knight g4 because I thought this was just game over. I thought I have knight h6 and queen h8 checkmate next turn, but Benjamin, in a very resilient fashion, finds this move g5, which covers h6, but more importantly, gives black a hook here for the knight going to f4, where it's supported by this pawn on g5. So here I play rook to f1, Benjamin plays bishop c8, and I go knight to e3. Now, again, I am completely winning here, but it felt like there should be a quicker way to win than what happens in the game. So I play knight to e3. He goes knight to f4 here, which is sort of the final blunder. Maybe you can play bishop e6 to try and survive, but I think even after bishop takes bishop, you probably have to take with the pawn to stop the knight jump, and I think knight g4 once again is simply crushing here for white. Benjamin plays knight to f4. Now I play this move knight to d5 here, simply trading off the knights on d5, and now I'm up a pawn in the center of the board. Black king is super, super weak, and all these pawns are very, very loose. So Benjamin plays bishop b7, and now I go rook to f5, targeting the pawn on g5. Here he plays the move queen g6, guarding the pawn. Not h6, because after h6, I have rook to f6, and this simply GG on the spot. After queen c7, rook takes h6. There will probably be a checkmate coming on h8 in the next move or two, or black will have to trade the queens and lose his bishop on b7, and then white will just win in the endgame as well. So Benjamin plays queen g6, and now I play his move bishop to b3, and here Benjamin Gledura resigns the game and resigns the match, and I move on to the next round. Now the reason Benjamin resigned is quite simple. This bishop is too powerful on b3 here. Really the only way for black to stop an instant loss is with bishop c8, but after rook takes b5, bishop d7, and say rook to c5, for example, white has 2 extra pawns. Your king is super weak here on g8 with his diagonal. Threats on the 5th rank, rook f1 incoming as well. And I can also just start pushing p on the queen side to boot. So very, very hopeless situation, and Benjamin just ends the suffering here. Doesn't want to prolong it because he knows he's going to lose. And if you play a move like rook bishop c6, for example, there are a few ways to win. Rook f6 wins material, but even rook to f1, let's say bishop e8, rook f6, queen g7, and then something like e5 here is also just crushing. I have these double stacked rooks. I can start pushing d4, d5, d6, and once again, it's just completely hopeless. So there really was nothing left for Benjamin to do, which is why he resigned this game. And with that, I win this match by a score of 1.5 in the classical portion. I do move on now to the 4th round, where I will be playing against Ramesh Babu Pragnanantha from India, a very, very talented junior. He just very recently broke the 2,700 rating mark. Very, very dangerous player. Going to be an exciting match. I do have 2 rest days because there are no tie breaks for me tomorrow. But then after this round finishes, the next day is a rest day. So it'll be 2 days off for me. Plenty of time to prepare, relax, maybe go and see the city a little bit. But at any rate, I'm very, very happy that I was able to win this match in regulation. No surprises, unlike some other mishaps which did occur today where some other top players were eliminated. At any rate, I'm through, and winning the match is all that matters. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap. Make sure to hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already, and I'll be back in 2 days with some more great recaps. I might do a recap tomorrow if Fabiano or, say, Nepo were to lose. If there's some, like, really exciting game, maybe I'll do a recap of that. Most likely, I'll just take the day off, but just letting you guys know. So I hope you have enjoyed the recap, and I'll be back very soon with some more great coverage here from the FIDE World Cup in Baku, Azerbaijan. See you guys. Bye.